So let's get into the fuel system and primarily making your own fuel rails. So this is just generic bar stock or rail stock. These are 20-inch per, and basically I've transposed a 14-inch cut line, which amounts to about a 1/4 inch on either side longer than the factory rail. We can always cut that down and shape that as needed later. If I really need to shorten it up to the factory length, I can cut a 1/4 inch off either side. That's all part of mock-up with once I put, because AN fittings are going to go in here basically. So I'm going to cut these down to 14 inches, and that's basically because how the spacing looks on these, it's really close to the outside here, and it's not really a problem. I just want a little bit more meat, and I have the ability to do so. You know, these guys, they want to save as much money as possible, so if they cut a 1/4 inch off each side of the rail, every 1/4 inch they cut, they save 100 grand, or they save $1 million, or whatever the fuck their metrics are. I have no idea, based on production volumes. Not only that, they're using a Bosch part number, so who knows what this, you know, all it is just height, right? Like, or spacing. So I think this is, I can't even remember what spacing these are, but yeah, I guess we can measure it real quick. So it looks like the injectors are 5 and let's see, what is that, 5 1/8, or 4 1/8, 4 1/8 inch spacing. I mean, who knows with a little wiggle room in there, it might be 4 inch on the money, because the bore spacing on the F-136 is 4 inch, so it's probably just 4 inch. It's just that these injectors are not. Anyways, doesn't really matter. So it's probably 4 inch on the money as far as the spacing's concerned. I'm going to give myself an extra 1/4 inch on the front and on the back of the rail by just cutting it where I want, and then we'll go from there. So these rails are meant for you to drill into on here, and for the injector hole. So all you really need to do, because it's essentially the same thing, right? The box part is the fuel carrying part, and then the injector bung that they solder on, or that's not soldered, that's something else. It'll come to me, I'm having a brain fart. But at any rate, the injector bung that they add to the rail is basically the same as just this whole entire portion. So these rails are going to be, there's not really a structural issue, but these rails are going to be a lot stronger, and you can weld to them. And then so pretty much all I'm going to do is mimic what they did on the back, and weld a piece of aluminum either across the top to bolt down, or, you know, get a piece of angle aluminum, weld to it. It's really here nor there. I mean, it's pretty much flush with the top of the rail, so you could come straight from the top of here and just weld a piece of 1/4 inch aluminum and then drill a hole in it, and there you go, you would have a hold down. So I'll be cutting these down here, and we'll catch back up when I do that. All right, so we've got the rails cut down. I've sort of prepped the end here. After you drill these, you're gonna have to prep the inside of the rail and everything to make sure that you know the metal shavings, when you poke through the rail itself, you're gonna have some stuff in there, so you're gonna need to clean that out anyway. So this is gonna get a whole deal. But so I've got the factory rail on top here, and I'm getting, you know, approximately, if you look at it, you're getting about 4 1/16. I know I'm moving around a lot right now. It's because I'm holding the camera and stuff, but that's about what I'm getting as far as spacing. So I've got my rough etch here, just holding them side by each, and let's go ahead and say, oh, that's pretty much 4 1/16 there. as far as that one's concerned, as far as spacing. 4 1/16 again. And let's see, 4 1/16 again. So now I'm going to measure the width of the rail, and then I'm going to divide that by 2, and then I'm going to use a straight edge to trace a line all the way down. And then that'll give me my X for where each injector goes. And then I'm going to punch through with a smaller bit as my lead bit. And you can see how big the hole is in the factory rail. So I'll just match that hole size. You could go to this, but if this is good enough for the factory feed hole, definitely good enough for this application. If later or whatever you want to open that up, by all means, you know, open that up. What really matters is the sealing hole right here, and then the location. So so you're going to measure this depth with your little micrometer here, and then you're going to basically mark your drill bit and of that diameter with like a piece of tape or something, put it through. I have done this before, so I know that this works. It's really not that big of a deal to make your own fuel rails. You have to really screw this up. Like, you have to be, I would say on this measurement, you have to be about, if you get about a 1/2 inch off, then the injector sits so crooked in this hole when it's trying to line up with the rail that it has sealing issues. On the bottom you get vacuum leaks, and then on the top you could get fuel leaks. So it leaves you getting these like big ass O-rings and trying to fix stuff that way if you get that off. But if you're off a smidge this way or a smidge that way, you're fine, because as you saw before, the injectors, they can wiggle a little bit in this hole, so it doesn't have to be absolutely perfect. No, do you want it to be as close as possible? Of course. But it's not something to stress out about. It's not something to go paralysis by analysis. You know, it's kind of like, yeah, that's good. All right, so I use the micrometer to make a little scribe. Don't know if the camera's gonna pick it up. So I just set it at half the distance. You can see this little scribe going this way. And then I just center punched where the scribe met my 4 1/16. And then this one I actually drilled the pilot hole already for it. After you drill a pilot hole, you're gonna wanna check and readjust. In case the bit walked, a scotch, or something like that. Like I said, little bit, not a big deal. But it's always good to measure twice, cut once. In this case, you are cutting material, drilling material. Measure twice, drill once. So these two I'm going to measure, and I'm going to get these set. Then I can adjust these two in and out, these two in and out, and go from there. I don't think that I'm going to, because I'm going really slow and getting a really straight drill. But, you know, there's no reason not to check. So anyways, I'm going to get the rest of the pilots drilled, and then we'll start taking measurements on that for the other hole. All right, so I've got all the pilot holes drilled now on the measurements that I took. We can see that, like I was saying, just keep measuring, but they're all looking good. They're all looking really really close, if not right on, at 4 1/16. So that seems to be the measurement here for the injector spacing. So now what I'll do is I will find the drill bit for the size of that hole right there, the lower hole, and then I'm going to run that all the way through, and then that'll make it to where when I run this larger bit, I'll be taking off less material. So I'm going to run, I just ran the pilot bit through. I'm going to find the right bit that fits in that hole, and then I'll share that information. The pilot bit is just a pilot bit. So pick a smaller size drill bit, drill your pilot hole, and then do your finals, right? And if you screw this up, you know, what's another $50 for a rail? So just, you know, don't be scared to do things like this. That's all I'm saying. Not that anybody is. It's just there's no reason to not just try stuff. It's okay. Screwed this rail up. Time to get another rail. Anyways, so that's what I'm gonna do now. So now all I did was measure the depth at I want to say that's approximately 12 millimeters, because you know it's going to be metric, and then transpose that onto my drill bit. You do have to account for the tip. So what I did was I'm going to drill on the shallow side, and then we'll see from there how much deeper I want to go. I'm using a 1/2 inch drill bit for this. These are tapered on this end. So it is a slight taper from the inlet to where the O-ring seats. Down where the O-ring seats, it's a little bit bigger than a 1/2 inch. Up here, it's a little bit wider than that even. So what I'm gonna do after I get these holes drilled is I'm gonna use a Rolox on the air, and I'm gonna taper that hole. I'm just gonna slowly start opening it up, sanding it out, and then seeing how the injector O-rings fit and adjusting accordingly. It is tedious, it really is. And they make drill bits for this, but as you can see, you don't really need a specialty drill bit for this. I'm not sure if those specialty drill bits taper, so that would save a lot of time, but seeing as how I drill injector holes like once every 5 years, this is just not that big of a deal to do like one time, right? So anyways, that's my technique for going about getting these right. And you'll see that those are tapered when you guys take your measurements. Okay, so now we have all of our steps in place at approximately 12 millimeters. And we're starting to mimic the factory rail here pretty good. But you could tell that 1/2 inch hole is quite a bit smaller. I'd rather be too small than, anyway. You can see that the O-ring doesn't even want to fit in here and stuff like that. And the factory rail. This is what trues the injector. So it sits against the rail. So that's my objective, is to get this to sit against the rail. So that hole's gonna have to be tapered and worked a little bit with a Rolox, and just kind of sit here and do this and check and adjust, and you know, open them up and develop a skill. Anyways, so I'm sure you guys maybe you have better ways of doing this, but this is how I've done it before. So I'm just gonna do what I know that works. So I'll catch you guys up at the I guess the next step. Okay, so first test fit. So I currently have the injectors I'm going to be using in there. They are the Demon red eye injectors, and yeah, everything looks good. So this is my rail with those injectors. Let's see, I'll pull it out. There we go. Seems like everything was sealed up nicely. And obviously the rail is holding the injectors quite tightly, or else they would just, you know, plop right out of the rail. That's something you want to be careful of when you're doing this, is how tightly the O-ring is being held in there. You want to make sure that that seal remains. Well, let's go check it out compared to the factory rail. So there it is. So the Hellcat Red Eye injectors are 700 cc. I know they work with ethanol and all that good stuff, and they do have a little pencil on them, just like the factory Maserati ones. Not sure how much that matters. I do know that the spray pattern is a little offset, so we'll see how that plays. If anything, we just change over to like ID 750 or something along those lines. I did put a little grease on there, as you should. and then we can check and just see how it's sealing, and you can see that it's smeared the grease all the way out. So that's telling you if it's pushing the grease, it's acting like a squeegee in there. It's a tight fit. Let's see. Let's wipe this off. You guys can see how these holes are looking and how they tapered out. So, like I said, just use a Rolox and taper the hole. And then up here at the top, there's a deeper taper, right, like this, to help the O-ring get started, because you don't want to rip an O-ring. But that's basically what it looks like with the top taper. And you can see that it won't go any lower than the top taper. And then you're actually, just like a regular fuel rail, you'll have to press it in, and then it bottoms out, and there you go. Now, the only thing I need to do is the fabrication part, which is the straps that go across the top for the hold downs, just like the factory rail. And then the ORB, or the, not the ORB, the weld the bungs on. This rail is for dash 8 hole. And then I also need to clean out all that stuff on the inside. That's from drilling through. I just wanted to see how it test fit and how the injectors were lined up and everything. And everything's looking good. So I'll probably get these rails done and on the car and get the factory fuel system modified to accept them. And then I'll put the factory injectors in them, and that'll be the test for the rail sealing and the height and how they hold and everything, because if they work with the stock injectors, they'll work with these Demon Red Eye injectors, because they're basically the same thing. Let's see, pull one out. So the factory Maserati injector has a longer pencil on it, but that's just a matter of spray pattern and what they wanted, let's say, for emissions or, you know, whatever. So the thing that matters is the O-ring spacing. So this is an industry standard O-ring spacing. So you either have longer or shorter distance between the two O-rings, right here and right here. And the Demon Red Eye has the same spacing as the factory Maserati. At this point, when you're making your own rail, it doesn't really matter what the spacing is on these. I've got some Mustang GT injectors that I could show you. They're like way spaced out. Doesn't really matter because you're making your own, you're welding your own mounts. So you have some freedom with making your own rail, and you could see that it doesn't take very much. So yeah, there's the little tapered in there, kind of smoothed it out. You can see there's still probably about 1/8 of an inch of material down there between the rail and the opening. I believe that's to also help with pulsations. So, I mean, you could drill this all the way through and it could just be a straight through setup. But I believe that helps with pulsations. I could be wrong on that. It could just be, I don't know, me overthinking or something. But I'm just mimicking a factory on that. It does give the injector something to bottom out on and sit against on this metal lip here. The injector can only go so far anyways. If you think about it, if you're running boost, the boost is actually going to try and push the injector up into the rail, and the rail is going to be bolted down. When you're not in boost, obviously the fuel pressure is going to try and push it back down. So you don't want too much of this going on back and forth, right? Actually, no, that doesn't make any sense. The fuel pressure is always going to win because it's always going to be higher. So totally disregard what I just said. The fuel pressure is always going to try and be pushing it down. Boost is just going to push back on it a little here and a little there. Anyways, doesn't matter. Still got clearance here for the clips against the rail. Let's see. I think I have some over here. Yep, here's a pigtail. There you go. You can test fit it. So this is a USCAR clip, oh, what else do they call it? They call it something else too. I think this is USCAR is what you can find these under. This is like an OBD1 style clip. So the harness will be converted to this, but all your aftermarket injectors are the same clip anyways. So You know, positive, negative. It's a solenoid. Doesn't really matter which one you pin to on the harness. So, but yeah, you're just going to splice those into the harness when these injectors go in. I guess you could make an adapter if you wanted to, but yeah, anyways, that's pretty much the rail fabrication and mounts aside. That's the most stringent part, is getting the spacing right and then tapering these holes and making all those measurements and all that kind of stuff. So we can go ahead and fit a factory injector in there with one hand. Okay, so there you go. So there's a factory injector in there, and it sits just about the same height as the stock ones. And yeah, that's pretty much all she wrote. Like I said, the pencils are just taller on these ones than these ones, but the O-rings are in the same spot, roughly. Probably push this in a little bit more. Anyways, doesn't really matter. That's the fuel rail side of making your own rails for pretty much anything. But I guess the Maserati is Granturismo, or the 4.2 in any one of these cars. Let's see, around this out, I am in the rails, I think $60 for the pair, because they're about $30 a piece shipped. So maybe $60-70 for the rails. And in this rail, with making the video and everything, it's probably taken me about an hour, hour and a half. That's because I've done it before. These won't take you long. You're drilling 4 holes, you're marking them, you're doing them right, and you're drilling them. You're drilling 4 holes, and you're got some little bit of tapering work and stuff like that with the roll-locks, and just take your time. Little goes a long way with that, and before you know it, you'll be fitting the injectors in there. I did test fit the injectors when I was doing that without the O-ring, just to see what the depth was and if the plastic was hanging up anywhere and stuff like that. So it's just one of those things that you do it until you get the feel that you like. You put an O-ring in it, you clean it out, and then you move on to the next one, right? So yeah, maybe an hour, hour and a half of your time, and you can make your own rails, at least this far anyways. You know, fabrication stuff's gonna add a little bit more time, but yeah, it's not very difficult. Okay, I've got a better view of how the rail fit up is. I've got one bracket on there. I've made these little brackets out of 6061 1/4" aluminum strap. I did it bevel the one side because the hump on the top of the rail, the round part, sticks up a little bit, so I had to bevel it to get this to sit flat. Let me see if I can't get this on there. Yeah, to sit flat on the mounting ledge on the intake manifold, because like I said, it's got a little bit of a roundness to it, right? The rail does. So that's what I've got so far. I'm going to go ahead and actually bolt this down and make sure it's good to go. I did drill a little bit bigger of a hole, you know, you got to have a little bit of adjustment in there. But it does sit flush once bolted down. I know that's blurry, but you get it. And this is how the rail fits. So I can fit my hand back here. You know, I have all kinds of room to, you know, as much room as the car's willing to give you to like screw on your AN fittings or whatever back here. So it's not really a big deal how much room there is back here. You can see a little bit better now. I can get my hand back here and mess around. It is what it is because they shoved the motor so far back, but I got some room back there. Because likely how the system will feed is in, you know, in from the fuel pump through the rails like this, and then it'll deadhead into the regulator, and then the return line will go back, right? So, yeah, I will need to go in and out on both sides. I'm not gonna do what they did and deadhead the rails. I'm gonna have the fuel flow through the rails like every other setup there ever was. So, or every setup where the fuel system's set up the way that you want it to be, which is flow through one rail through the other and then back, or vice versa. It could flow in this rail and then out that one and back. I don't know. It doesn't really matter at this point, but yeah, that's how it's going. And so I'm gonna have to do something about that, which is probably make a plug, whatever. That's future me's problems. And then you can see none of the injectors are like cocked sideways. If I move the harness, you can kind of see they're all straight up and down. So no issues as far as that's concerned. So now just make tabs. So it just dawned on me that I have my old intake manifold, so I have a way to jig this up outside of the car as far as the mounts are concerned. Anyways, this one's tight, and then that's gonna hold so that I can, I guess I could basically put a nut on this one, tighten it, move the rail where I want, and then tack it in place. And that way it is jigged on an actual intake manifold, because I know that the factory rails from this intake manifold work on the other one. I can use either or. So, but you can also see outside of the car, the lineup for the injectors is really straight. Obviously, that's not what you're more worried about is the injector being cockeyed one way or the other, because that'll make sealing issues with the O-ring on top or the O-ring on bottom. This one giving you a vacuum leak, this one giving you a fuel leak. Either one you don't want. So yeah, I'll continue. Well, there we go. Some half-assed decent welds. All the injectors are straight up and down. And now all I need to do is buy and get some fittings going. Very sturdy, obviously, with 1/4-inch billet aluminum straps. It's gonna be sturdy, and doesn't look too bad. Yeah, there you go. Make your own fuel rails for, I don't know, what are we in here per side? Maybe $50 per side. So, and some time, a few hours, and you got a fuel rail. Custom, billet fuel rail setup. Still haven't cleaned out the inside because I'm more worried about the fab stuff right now than I am about the finished product. These will probably get polished, make them look all nice and all that. I'll probably round these, all the touch-up details, but let's look down it, see if it's cocked on the injectors at all. No, holding the injectors straight up and down. So you don't want the rail cocked one way or the other this way, right? You want it straight on the injector so that it's not going to give you any leak issues, right? You can always, bend these a little bit to get it to fit straight and that kind of thing, but it look like they're pretty straight right here down the line. So if this rail isn't straight on the injectors, you'll get a fuel leak out that side like that. Same as if the injector is not straight on the setup like this. So just take your time and make a rail, I guess. It's not that big of a deal.